everyone, and welcome to Grace's Book Nook. This week we are going to be talking about The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, and I'm going to be comparing this book to the movie adaptation. So the basic premise of The Darkest Minds is that there is a pandemic only in the United States for some reason, and it kills most of the children, but the ones who are left surviving end up getting these supernatural powers, which is basically the entire driving force of the plot. So there are different color ranks on how dangerous these kids are. The lowest level in danger is a green, who basically just has super intelligence and is really smart, and they aren't seen as much as a threat. And then the next level up is blue, who can move things with their minds, which is a little less common than green, but still fairly common within the children affected. And then the next level up from that is yellow. So basically all yellows can control electricity, which is pretty dangerous in this book, except for the government feels like they can control yellows more than they can the next two levels. So next is orange. So oranges are able to get inside people's minds and see all of their memories and thoughts, and then they can also control people's brains and make them do things or think things or erase things from their memory or put things in their memory. So those are considered very dangerous, and it's pretty rare. Okay, and then the highest level for danger is a red, and basically reds can control fire, and they're seen as very dangerous, but because it's not like mind control, it's seen as a little safer than an orange, as in they can control reds more and use them for their own purposes, while oranges can't be controlled because they control other people's brains. So our main character, Ruby, is an orange, and she accidentally erased her parents' memory when she was 10 years old. Because her parents couldn't remember her, they called the cops, who put her in a re-education camp where kids are supposed to be cured, but as we know from most dystopian books, they don't really cure people, they're just bad news. So Ruby is put there when she's 10 years old and stays there for many years. Upon entering, she talks with a doctor or scientist who's supposed to determine what color she is because they're sorted by colors, and she's able to convince the doctor that she is a green, which is the safest color, by using her mind control, which she doesn't really know how to use, but she was able to do it this time. So for many years she lives with all greens, until one day she is about to be discovered that she's an orange, and she is aware that there aren't any other oranges in the camp, so she believes that she will be killed if she doesn't escape. So basically that's where the story takes us. I really love this book. It was such a fun read. It just started out so great. Usually when I'm picking up books, I'll read like the first chapter to decide if I actually want to buy it. But this one, I just read the first few pages and I was just obsessed. Like, it started out so good. It was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like this book. And then the middle to end part was also really great. I could never put it down because at that point I was just so invested in all of the characters, and all of the things that were happening in the plot were just so addicting. Like, it was impossible to put down. I finished it pretty fast. There was also a lot of unexpected plot twists. I feel like a lot of times in books, even when there are plot twists, they can be predictable still. But in this book, while there were some predictable plot twists, there were definitely a lot of ones that I just did not see coming. That's what really kept me turning the pages, because I really had no idea what was going to happen, but I needed to know. I also really love the characters. Alexandra Bracken wrote the characters so well. For example, the main character, Ruby, she was so likable, but she also had flaws, which was good, because sometimes when you find a likable character, they never have flaws, and they just seem so perfect, which just isn't realistic. And while this book isn't super realistic, with kids getting all of these superpowers, the characters are pretty realistic. So Ruby was a great character, but I'm pretty sure everyone who reads this book can probably agree that the best character is Liam. He is the love interest for Ruby, and he's just perfect. I mean, he has like a couple flaws, I guess, but yeah, he's pretty much written pretty perfect, and he's just so nice to everyone. There's also another character named Chubbs, and it takes you a while to warm up to him, but once you do, you just love him just as much as everyone else, just because he's had a hard past and stuff, and he's seen a lot of things, and he's become a little closed off because of that. But later, when he starts opening up and starting to trust the main characters, he just becomes such a likable person. He always has his heart in the right place, and he just wants to protect those around him. And then another really great character who's also one of the main characters, her name is Zoo. She is a little girl who is with Ruby, Liam, and Chubbs, and she's just so sweet. Because she's been scarred so badly because of the camps, she does not talk because of all the trauma. but she is so nice and sweet, especially to Ruby, and everyone loves, like, the main characters. I think everyone just loves the main characters who reads this. Alexandra Bracken wrote them so well. Definitely recommend reading this for the characters especially. It was also written in first person, which I really enjoyed because you only get the perspective of the main character, Ruby, and because of that, you don't really know the whole story. You never know who to trust because in this world, there's a lot of people who are trying to hunt down these kids for their bounties if they turn them in. You never know who's going to turn on people, and that makes it very interesting and compelling to read. There's also a ton of character growth in this. From the beginning, Ruby's just a little girl. She's only 10 years old, and by the end, she's around 16 or 17. And she just grew so much. In the beginning, she was just so uncomfortable, and she felt like she was a monster. And while she does still feel like that throughout the book, because this is a series, and she's still growing with her comfort with her powers, she does learn how to control herself more, so she's seeing herself as a little bit less of a monster, and she's made all of these friends. While she lost her family at the beginning, she did make all these friends, and she is loved again, and she just becomes a better person for it, and she starts to really care about other people again and let them into her life. This book also contains a lot of different things that are just so interesting to read. This book includes things like romance, it's dystopian. There's also a lot of greed because people are treating these kids as inhuman just so they can get money or feel safer somehow, even though they're just kids. And oh my gosh, the ending of this book was so good. It was such a cliffhanger. I really didn't see it coming until like a couple pages before it happened. Then it was like, oh, the ending was perfect. It was a cliffhanger, and it definitely made me want to read the rest of the books. I'm currently reading the second one because I had to take a little break to read Lore, which I just had a review on last week, so if you're interested, please check that out. So those are most of the things that I really loved about this book. Most of this book I just really enjoyed, and I'd really recommend it to all of you. Even if you're just a little interested, please give it a chance because you will not regret it. So there were just a couple things that I didn't love about this book. Like, it was slow during some parts. Like I said earlier, it started out really good, and then about the middle to the end was super good too. But there was just like some parts in between there where it's just a little slow, but I kept pushing through, and it was so worth it. It got a lot better. So if you're reading this and you're kind of thinking, I don't know, it's a little slow right here, push through. It's definitely worth your time. Also, I wish Ruby was a little more comfortable with her powers. That is something that she kind of has to grow with throughout this whole series, and especially this book because they're new to her. But I think she should really just embrace them, and I know it's hard for her, especially with all the trauma she went through erasing her parents' memory of her, which was really hard for her, obviously. But I think she would just really be so much better off if she was just proud of who she was, which I kind of understand why Bracken included that part of Ruby, because it would be hard to suddenly have all these powers, and because oranges are so rare, she didn't really have anyone to talk to about all these new things that were going on with her. So I guess I understand it. It's always more fun to see characters who really are comfortable with themselves, but I'm sure that that's going to be something that will be resolved in this series. So overall, I would totally recommend The Darkest Minds. If you have any interest in reading this, please do, and you will not be sorry. I think most people would enjoy this because it has things like romance, it's dystopian, there's a war between kids and adults, which is really interesting to see, and the characters are just so lovable in this. I feel like in a lot of books the plot might be good, but the characters are just kind of meh, but in this book the plot was amazing, the characters were amazing, the whole thing was just really a masterpiece. It was so fun to read. It was such an addicting plot, like I said earlier, I just never wanted to put it down. It was amazing. Also, it's a pretty fitting read right now, I think, because we're in a time of COVID, and this is like a plague happening through the United States in The Darkest Minds, so it kind of fits. You can kind of see how it really affects everybody. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I'm going to give it a 4 stars because there were a couple slow parts which took away from it just a little bit, but it was still such a good book, and I really enjoyed reading it. So yeah, definitely give it a chance. Alright, so now I'm going to compare this book to the movie. I was pretty excited for the movie. After I read this book and I found out there was a movie, I was just like, okay, even if it's not the best, I'm sure I'm still going to like it because it's The Darkest Minds and I really like the book. But unfortunately, the movie was just not it. It was really confusing. I was watching it with my mom who didn't read this book yet, and I had to keep pausing to explain things to her because it really just didn't cover what you need to know unless you've already read the book. Then you kind of understand what's happening, but that just does not make things very clear for the viewers. Also, I just felt like it didn't really follow the book's plot enough, where they just changed some things that were annoying. And I don't know what the budget was on that movie, but it seemed kind of low budget. The effects just weren't great, especially when you're dealing with superpowers. You kind of need to make it look realistic and convincing and stuff, or else it's just kind of not going to look the best. And this isn't really like something that the movie did wrong. I just don't really enjoy watching movies after I've read the book because I'll already have these characters in my mind and I think I know what they look like, for me at least, and then when I watch the movie they just don't look how I think they should look. Pretty much every character is just not really what I imagine them to look like. So as I'm reading the next book, I'm really just trying to like block out the characters from the movie and just focus on what I thought they were in the first book. I think the only character who I liked more in the movie was Zoo. She was just so adorable in the movie. But yeah, for all the rest of them, it's just a little hard to have all these characters build up in your mind who you love so much, and then all of a sudden they look completely different in the movie. Also, another thing I did not like about the movie was the writing was just unrealistic. The dialogue wasn't very good, and they just should have stuck with the Darkest Minds book a little more, I think, and that would have made it a lot better. So really, I would just say, read the book, don't watch the movie. It's not worth it. If you have any more questions on The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, leave them in the comments below and I will be sure to reply so you can decide if you want to read it or not. If you have anything else you want to say, just leave it down below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next Monday with another video. Bye!